you please introduce yourself, state your occupation and your connection to Northern Stage?
My name is Mark Calvert. I am a theatre director. What was the last one?
Your connection to Northern Stage?
I used to be an actor here. I was a drama facilitator here. I was a creative associate here. And finally, before I left, I was the associate director of Northern Stage.
What do you know about the history of Northern Stage?
Not a lot. I went on a 40-mile walk when it was 40. And that was really good. Apart from got really loads of blisters. I know it was built in 1969, maybe. There used to be a plaque up there. I don't know if it still exists. And I know it was called the University Theatre. And I know that still to this day that if you got a cab here, you've got to say University Theatre, and which I find quite bizarre because surely nobody must be dead by now or stopped driving taxis by now. But what do I know about it? Used to have an ensemble, which I used to be in. It's had, I don't know, that's it. That's all I know. Used to have orange seats. And what else do I know? The bar used to be downstairs. Oh my God, career suicide. That's about as much as I know. I'm not really into the history of Northern Stage. I know the university owned the footprint that the building sits on. This is all useful information. Have people been given like really long-winded answers about the history of Northern Stage?
Connor, who was the front house manager, had a speech because he used to show people around and he gave a really succinct, very articulate whenever. This is part of it.
I used to know the way at the bars, but now I don't. Like how many bars there were in the fly floor. Yeah.
They didn't say changed it to Newcastle Playhouse at some point, apart from that.
Oh yeah, it was Newcastle Playhouse. It was Northern Stage for one point. There was huge controversy about that as well. Anyway, sorry, keep going. I'm boring.
What is your first memory of Northern Stage?
Eating French fancies in the old cafe bar downstairs with Tony Nielsen, and I'd just finished selling cars, Nissans, and this was my first theatre gig, and we had to have a sort of meet and greet, and there was like loads of people, and we had to sit and have uncomfortable like afternoon tea, and that's one of my first memories. Then I think my most prominent memory is walking down the old backstage corridor before we did a show called Clockwork Orange. It's my first professional gig in this theatre, and I was like absolutely wired. And I went on, and there was quite a lot of fight scenes in it, and in one of the fight scenes I got kicked and I had to sort of spin and land on my chin, and I cut my chin open, and it was bleeding quite badly. And also through all the first act I had a piece of fat hanging down here from my chin. So that's one of my memories from on stage.
What year did you talk about there?
1998.
What are some of your best memories?
That was one of them. I've done lots of things here, and I've been around the world with working for a theatre company, which is like class, for somebody from where I'm from. What else do I remember? My best memories. I've been in this building when I used to work here as a director. I used to walk through there every morning and go, wow, this is a massive privilege. I used to love sitting in here when it was quiet, and just looking at it, which is a bit weird, but it is a beautiful thing to do, sit in an empty theatre, because most people only experience it when other people. Other memories, I think, so Clockwork Orange was great. I did loads of really cool small scale, like two-handers in stage 2 for a while. There was a show, there was a season called the Playboy season, which we did Glengarrigan Ross, oh God, what else was it? Edmund, and it was it was really buzzy because it must have been about 25 actors around the whole space. It was great. I ran for 6 weeks. I think the opening night of James and Giant Peach is a particularly good memory for me, and the opening night of Christmas Carol, that was another great, which I directed. What other good memories? I think the people have been amazing. Like I have met and still have so many friends working with people. Like they weren't colleagues. I think there is something slightly cheesy about what I'm about to say, but it is like a family when you're here, and it's quite a great thing to do with your life. And I've been so lucky, and it's given me like so many different gifts, this place, that it will forever be in my heart, because it's like it's never stopped giving me things. And so like I absolutely love it, and I love coming in, and I love like bumping into people, or you get that question about what you're doing, and which is a bit boring. But and also I think like all of the other artists I've met, and seeing people progress, which has been great, and doing well, and I don't know, like loads of stuff. There's loads of stuff. Like it's a complete gift to work here most of the time.
Can we chat about some of those people? Like specifically, is there any like like for example, do you start with like Alan Lydiard, for example, and talk about working with him?
Oh yeah, okay. So Alan Lydiard was the first AD of the building I ever met. He was a very brilliant man. I've got a great impression of him, which I won't do because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Everybody has an impression of Alan, but he gave me a shot. I was like 21, and he auditioned me 4 times. In one of the auditions, I popped my knee out in a movement call for 3 hours. And at one point, I was going to put my hand up and say, I think I've hurt myself. But I just went, if you do this, you're not going to get in. So I'd spent the whole afternoon like pretending that I hadn't damaged my knee. And then by the time I walked down Claremont Road, it was a massive lump. But anyway, I got the job, which is great. And he took so many risks on me. Like, he gave me so many big shots. He made me play Romeo from Romeo and Juliet, which was an absolute car crash of theatre. I remember once there was a school that was late, and at that time, Baz Luhrmann's film had just come out with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, and so they missed me. So when I came on as Romeo, like, the whole 3 back rows just burst into laughter, which is totally fine. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, Baz Luhrmann and Alan Lydiard, hand in glove. Alan Lydiard, he formed an ensemble of North East actors, which I think was an amazing thing to do. And he ran it for as long as he could. And he took me around the world and opened my eyes to things. And I mean, not just him, but like the opportunity he gave me did that. So I have lots and lots of things that I owe Alan Lydiard, even though he doesn't really speak to me now. Although he did send me a text when I left saying, "We must meet up, that's it, that's Alan Lydiard." Don't put that in. Erica Wyman, who was an absolute like gem. She was a total gem. She is now running the RSC. And she gave me my first shot as director, and she sort of put her like belief in me. And I think that's going back to the previous question. I think that's what it's given me, like belief. And I think it's so important in our region to have that belief, to believe you can do something. And those 2 people, I think, fundamentally laid the path for my career. And I can't thank them enough. And I don't know, like nights drinking with people, not getting drunk, but having drinks with people in the bar and chatting on. But those 2, I think, have been especially important to my life. And so I can't thank them and this place enough.
What are some challenges you've faced being at Open Stage?
I don't know. I think sometimes this place is used as a sort of training academy for directors to come in and cut their teeth and then go somewhere else. And I think that's unfortunate for our region that happens, because it's sort of like a football team. Every 7 years it changes its head and moves on, and so it never gathers enough momentum to be the glorious thing it can be. So I think that's a challenge for our region, but also for this building, that it can never quite position itself in a space where it owns its space, because it's always having to sort of like be a chameleon. Challenges, I think anybody that's worked here is always doing about 7 jobs, and I don't think until you work here you realise just how many jobs people do, even though they only got one title. I think sometimes the perception of the building is like quite dark. I don't think people, I don't think people sometimes like it, and I understand why people don't like it. Because it's got the most money, it's the biggest place. You know, it's like, I don't know, on your homework, could do better, always. But I think it's always going to be that space because it's the biggest building in the region, and so it's always going to have people going, could do better. That's been a challenge. I don't know, generally, I haven't found that challenging. I mean, I haven't really found that challenging. I mean, sometimes I think the change of leadership takes a while to adjust to. But that's life, innit? It changes, and so you got to change as well. But apart from that, I've had a pretty sweet time.
Cool. Why do you think Northern Stage is important to the city and the region?
Because it can make work that can fly a flag. It can also, and that could be like in stage 3, it could be in here, it could be in stage 2. It can, I think, allow artists from our region to, I don't know, build a network, meet the next person that's going to help them on their way. It can make massive things that other theatres can't. And I think, or bring massive things that other theatres can't. And I think that's also important to watching things like, when I've watched things here like Deviate and Complicity and the Marley, what's it called? The Marley Drama Theatre of St. Petersburg and all the names are going out of my head. What are they called, man? Physical Theatre Company. Frantic Assembly and Knee High and, you know, bring in like national, international people to the Northeast so we can, and Gecko, that we can sort of sit and watch it and go, oh, I'll nick that, or that's amazing, I want to do that. And I think it's that level of inspiration that it can bring to many different areas of your life. And also that when I first started, I didn't realise that actually people were working in offices. I just thought it was like people on stage doing acting. And I think that also, like upstairs in this building, and downstairs in this building, there's a huge group of artists that never get any recognition because they're never seen. And I think that's sort of important to people in our region or people from Newcastle because if you don't want to be an actor or you don't want to be a director or a writer or a producer, you can be a producer or you can do something else. Like, it's multifaceted theatre, and I think that is one of the most interesting things about it, that it takes like a team of people to put something on stage that another group of people can watch, and I think that's really important that this building stays alive and stays ambitious for our region and for people in our region. Otherwise, like, we have to go to Leeds, and that would be a real pain in the arse. And it has to be here to offer that ambition and scope and possibility to anybody that wants to come and do theatre. The end.
So, kind of coming off the back of that, what challenge would you set Northern Stage for the next 50 years?
Be more regional. That's not in a parochial way. That's not do here, hinny, what you doing and that. Let's come down the mine. Not like that. It's not about that. It's about like really understanding our region, really understand the artist in it, not pretending to or paying lip service to. It's really getting to grips with what our region needs from a building like this, which is to front and centre its artists and the people from our region. It needs to stop importing people. It's a devil of a thing that we import so much talent and then they go away. And I'm not saying that every single person on stage or around it has to be from our region, but there is, I don't know, it's like Newcastle United, you know, I mean, I'm not a Toon fan, but like they live, breathe and eat that club. And I think there's also a feeling in our city, in our region, that we, as artists, we want this place to be that place, because St James's, by the way, I'm pointing that way, and I think if it did that, that would be a huge challenge it could overcome. It needs to build from its roots here, and then to be national, international, to take work from our region, like genuinely from our region, with people from our region, made by people from our region. So then we can go to anywhere in the world and say, this is from our region. And I think if it did that more, I think it would find its place in the world a lot more. Because it's like, going back to my football analogy, it's like, which I don't know why I'm doing, but like you've got a director of football, haven't you? So like what you can't keep doing is just every time you swap a manager in, you've got to like replay the style. Like it's got to be a style of the club, of the theatre, and I think that's what I'd love to see. That it has a definite, even though they say it's got a common set of values and missions and the rest of it, but it needs to have that bred into people that come in and take charge. Because otherwise, as I've said earlier on, it just becomes a place where you learn, and then you leave, and then we all go, oh, who's next? And then we all have to jump around going, hello. And I think that's unfortunate, because we always take a slight step back. But I imagine the same everywhere else. But I'd love it to be definitely more regional, but with a national and international focus. I don't know if I can. What happens on tour stays on tour. Well, I don't know. So we were doing a show called Clockwork Orange, and there's a gang in Clockwork Orange called the Droogs. And so there was me, Craig Conway, Stephen Lamb, and Alex Elliott. Is that 4? Yeah, I think so. And we were playing the Droogs, and the rest of the company were a bit older than us, and so we led the show, and we were the worst paid people in the show, because they had a tiered section of, if you were more experienced, you got like another 120 quid more a week, and so we were on at that point like 240 quid, and some people were on like 400 quid, and I think it led to some tensions, shall we say. And also from the oldest members of the company, they like to drive the van, which became a little bit of a sort of like a thing about territory. And also at that point, we're all a little bit young and a little bit like, fuck it. And so like, I think we sort of like pushed back a bit and they didn't like it. And so it all culminated in a pre-show fight on stage. I mean, only between 2 members, maybe 3, 4. And then we had to do a show, and that show was awful. Well, I mean, it was awful because there was a lot of like blame game going on. It's a bit like Brexit. It was a bit like sort of like they couldn't see our point of view, we couldn't see their point of view, and so that's how it was. But I think that then we had to be called in front of the chief exec and Alan Lydiard, and we had to have like, I don't know, circles of what's it called? We had to sit and talk about our feelings and what we should and shouldn't do. So yeah, end up having, and it sort of went on a little bit. I don't think it was ever really ironed out until Every left. I think Every just pretended that it was happening. No, not happening. There was. Yeah, sort of like, I can't remember what they were, like it was training actors, something else, and then there was like the actors, and so even though we were doing all the work, so like he cast us in all of the major roles across his season, so we were always on the least money, and it just, I don't know, and obviously at some point you sort of go, well, why is that? I could understand it if they flipped it the next show, but it was always us 4 that were in the front of it, and So yeah, it became a little bit. I mean, was I bothered? Probably. I don't know. I was getting paid to be an actor. I was quite surprised. I was like, holy shit! Like somebody's actually paying me to do this. I don't know if I ever really. I don't ever really got to my like into my heart. What I hated was the sort of that level of. I don't know. I can't even describe the words. All the words I got out of my head. But yeah, it was weird, but still fun.
It was your first show? It was your first professional show?
Well, I did a show in Darlington with a company called Durham Theatre Company at that point, and again Romeo and Juliet, which I played Mercutio and Friar Lawrence, and then nothing happened, and so I ended up selling cars. So I'd like essentially retired at like 19 or something, or 20, whatever it was, and so I remember like seeing an advert for the ensemble while I was selling Nissans, and I was like, I'm going to do that. So I packed in selling cars, and I like crossed my fingers and hoped to die, and so by the time I got the job, it was like 6 weeks until we started, and I just got my final pay from the dealership, and so I had like the best 6 weeks. It was like the World Cup as well. So me and my pal watched every single World Cup match, every single one, and by the time we got out the group stages, we were a little bit like, oh god, not more football. It's like sometimes 4 matches a day, but it was a great summer.
Could you just tell us a little bit like about the boundaries, not boundaries, but the sort of parameters of the ensemble? Like how long did it run for? How many members were in the ensemble? Like how long were you contracted for? Anything?
Initially it was 18 months, and then it sort of went to, I don't know, 26 months, and then it just kept adding on every 6 months. And then there was like quite a lot of people had moved and changed and left, and at one point they sacked 4 people, not sacked, made redundant. And so it was always changing, but it was like maybe a core group of maybe 5 that hung around. Was it then? Yeah, it was. I got a job with David Jason on a submarine, and I just bought a house, and it was going to be 3 weeks in Italy in a dock. The show was called Ghost Ship. It was awful actually, but and I was going to be the radar op. And I was going to get paid $3,000, and I was like, Italy, 3 weeks, maybe more. I don't know. $3,000 seems like quite not a lot of money at that point for that David Jason on a submarine. But I remember getting a call from my agent, and they said, "Oh, you got it," and I was like, right, and I was still here. And then I remember me and my wife just living literally in our house like 2 weeks, and she's going, oh my God, we're going to go. So I turned that job down, and with David Jason, now my agent bid me off, and then I decided to give up acting actually, because after all the fighting and stuff like that, I thought, there's not a lot of choice in acting, you've got to go the other way. So that's why I stopped acting, because I was sick of middle-aged men complaining while they were wearing like daft outfits in dressing rooms. So I thought, I've got to make some choices for myself. So I binned acting off, never to go back. Yeah, it's true.
A lot of people have talked about, I don't know if you've got any experience in sawing or had any interaction with that, a lot of people talk about Davy Whittaker. Did you ever see Davy?
Not really. I remember seeing Davy. We were doing Grimm's Tales here, and he was doing a show in stage 2, and so Davy and I would just pass in the backstage corridor. I think he was a fox, or he just would have a hat and a tail coming out of his dinner jacket, and so that's my lasting memory of Davy Whittaker, beyond all the work he did. But here, there used to be a backstage corridor behind you guys, and it was quite narrow before you got the Gulbenkian, and so you'd sort of like, as you were going either side of the wings, you'd pass each other, and he'd go like that, hello, and I'd go, hello, and that's about it.
Any other questions before we head into that last one? Okay. Is there anything else that you, because we've got more time for questions, is there anything else that you want to talk about that sort of we haven't covered or we haven't got around to talking about? Maybe more directing or certain shows or shows you saw or different artists, anything like that?
All right, 3 things. This here now, what you're doing here with the people you've got here, I think is again like part of its lifeblood. Like watching Emily in stage 2 work with Louis, and that thing that was built over those 2 years, I think is again like I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you, one of the most important things about this building, and it always offers opportunity to people, and I think that was quite an extraordinary time here. So that's one thing that I think we need to put in the Young Company, and the work that's come out of Young Company, like this has come out of Young Company, and all those other things, and I think that has been like an amazing thing to watch, a group of artists at whatever age they are, like have that confidence drawn out of them because it was already there, and to go to Birmingham and to watch that show was like a proper special moment to be around that. So that's one thing. I think seeing Gecko perform here the first time with a show called The Overcoat, that blew my mind. And since then, all I want to do is make shows like Gecko, and also Knee-High's, oh God, what was it called? No, it was the one with, she put her hands in the buckets of blood. And at the beginning, they opened the books and they said, once upon, oh God, what was it called? I've got to find out what it was called. Oh, Wild Bride. The Wild Bride, absolutely knockout. Quite fascinating and a bit of a laugh sometimes. But I think that is my experience of working for on stage, was that the first 6 weeks felt like a bit of a holiday, even though we were working. And after that, it just got extraordinarily horrible. That's my experience of it. Oh, well, then people like Louis and Lee Mattison and Cooper McDonough, and they sort of made it their mission to help in any way they can to feed families, predominantly from biker, but also other areas. I remember once I got a phone call from Louis, and it was like 3:30, and it had been raining all day, and her, Lee, and Cooper had been delivering food all day, and they had another delivery in Fenham, which is essentially where I live, and so they said, can you come pick it up? And so I did, and so they all walked around the bottom of Raby Street, and they were absolutely drenched, but they were dancing, and I was like, isn't that great? And then, so I sort of dropped 2 deliveries off in Fenham and in Bensham, but what they did over such a long period of time of trying to find ways to like help out was like massive, like so massive that they did that, because most people were scared to come out of the house. Like I know there's other people around that, but that's my memory of like Louis like pushing to have families fed and entertained and trying to keep themselves going as a family unit. Like massive. Oh yeah, that was class. I mean, somehow I got roped into doing like this thing called doorstep music, where I mean, I just ended up like lifting things in and out of vans for like 6 weeks in biker. So there's a band of Jeremy Bradfield, Hannah Bial Sanders. I can't remember her name. Fuck. Anyway, cut that bit out. No, it wasn't. Oh, was it? Oh, I can't remember her name. Anyway, cut that bit out. Cut. There was a band made up of great artists from the Northeast, like Knockout, and they every week would tour around 4 or 5 places on the biker wall and set up as well. It wasn't just like plug in your disco lights. So where am I going back to? Oh, shows. So shows such as Gecko's Overcoat, which I first saw here, just like blew my mind. It blew my mind what they were doing. And then things like The Wild Bride from Knee-High. Amazing like live music with like really imaginative theatre making. And yeah, and like those things, like which you can never forget, which I totally love this place for. And finally, for like allowing me to actually direct. So when I was like 16 and was doing Guys and Dolls at Durham County Youth Company, I'd never expected to be doing like shows on this stage with that wall out for 400 people and or more, and I love that. Like, I think James the Giant Peach, I think, was a moment in time where I'd got the gecko designer Rhys Jarman. I was like absolutely fascinated, and so like Rhys and I built for like 5 years alongside Jeremy Bradfield and Martin Hilton, and we made work here that I think I'll always be proud of, and it was massive, and not many people get to direct massive things, and it was terrifying, and at the same time, like such a thrill. That's it.
A little bit too much. Would you like to talk a little bit about North?
Yeah, I mean, I think North is. I think North was important in its time. Like we were. So North is a program that we set up under Erica Wyman, maybe 2012. Like we were going to Edinburgh then at the festival, and we just, or it was the year before we were going to go, or the first year we were there. And I remember seeing a company, I think they're called Thickskin, and they were directed by a creative associate from Frantic Assembly, and they did this amazing play, and there was like 5 young actors in it, and I'd seen quite a lot of work that summer, and that was the thing that I was like, that's extraordinary. I want to do that. I want to form a company from like Northeast artists. And so we spent sort of like 2 years making companies that then have made other things, like Maria Crocker, who's just directed a show here at Christmas. I don't know, Bob and Hannah from Kitchen Zoo, Luca Rutherford. Like, it generated quite a lot of artists that came out of it. And I think it's going back to the work that Louis did. It's about generating belief and letter room, you know, that sort of thing, you know, like amazing things. Megan Doyle, the first associate artist of Wise Children, you know, Emma Rice, like, I mean, class beyond class. And I think after that, you know, it sort of moved into some other things that I think were sometimes successful, sometimes not. But I think there was like, it's done, I think, a lot of good. I think it's done a lot of good, that programme, to I think, for this building to have its doors open, to be seen to be trying to help. And I think it's also opened a lot of doors for those artists that came through it for 12, 14, 21 weeks. So that was North. Yeah.
Can you tell me about how the pandemic hit the theatre you, and what yours and Louis and Chris and everyone's response was and what you did?
Well, unfortunately for me, I never got to stop working. It was actually, like, the pandemic was really weird, because I remember being in here, like, the day it all started. I remember, like, sat watching Louis and Kate Denby watch the news, and I was meant to be doing a North session, and then we had to cancel it, because essentially it was that point where they were going, this is going to be crazy. And then I remember being sat in here, socially distanced, with all the staff team. Used to having a theatre for social distance meetings, like working out how to use Teams, which was like, I mean, it was just like, it was unbelievable. It was like they were dragging, I don't know, people from the Stone Age and giving them an early 2000 PC. It was like, oh my God, it's video calling, how do we use it? And it was really weird. And then, you know, you think about 18 months on, everybody's like, it's just second nature now. What did it do? I think it showed the gaps in the industry. I think it created a lot of anger. That's my experience of it, working here. There's lots of people angry, and I just didn't know how to, like, chuck the water out the boat fast enough. And I think, like, so people like Hamera, Chris Clayton Scott, Johnny Rothwell, who was there? So, like, you know, people took on extraordinary jobs and learned things that they wouldn't have done without this pandemic. And it was quite strange watching us all grow together closer as a company, as the people who worked for the company, over those 12 months, 9 months we were doing it. And then I think also what it did, maybe, potentially, who knows, maybe 5 years' time we'll understand what's happened. It's given also people the space to go, I want to try something different, or I've learned that skill and I've like explored and seen new things. I think it was quite interesting for the industry how to sort of keep itself visible. I don't know, I didn't watch much online theatre. And what I saw was great. But I don't know, I think we're probably yet to find out, aren't we, how it's affected us. But I think it was here, especially, even though I was at home, it felt like a pressure cooker. And it, like, although I did get to sort of do podcasts, which was... Doorstep Music was like a real proper moment in time again around that space, because it was summer and it was actually quite a nice summer. And so what Northern Stage and Louis actually decided to do was just try to find a way to take some music. She'd been inspired by the singing in Italy, and so what we got to do was to go out with a band of great artists from the Northeast, and we'd play 5 or 6 spaces in Byker every Friday, and we'd like set up this, and it wasn't just like disco lights on your Uncle Frank's, I don't know, 60th birthday. It was like a proper setup. It had like massive speakers. It was all, they had wireless sound. It came and it was like powerful, and I think the feeling it generated, because also you could like ask for requests, and just sometimes like having people hanging out of like top floor bits of Byker Wall singing and dancing, and was quite like a brilliant thing, because it actually like because you sort of forgot about people, didn't you? You sort of forgot about being in groups, and then you saw groups of people again. It was like, God, that's magic. And the power of music was again brought back to me about how special that is for people. And so yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And I think, you know, Louis and the Young Company and all the people that work for it like never forgot about Byker and brought such a lot to that area that I think was important at that time.
So, if you could choose one word,
Bullshit!
what would it be?
One word. Oh, God, I don't know. Possibilities.